Welcome to Cornwall and to a new look time team, where we've assembled some old friends and some new faces, and we're here to investigate a truly remarkable site that you, the fans, have voted for. We're investigating a mysterious Iron Age network of underground passageways and caverns, known in Cornwall as a fogou.
I've never seen an Iron Age underground chamber like that before, and I just don't think it gets any better than that. It's just fantastic.
It was rediscovered 25 years ago by the local farmer Chris Hoskin.
So I drove around the field and I thought, there's a hole there, and went and had a look, and the tractor had straddled that hole.
Oh, wow.
So,
Missed it.
So yeah, I just missed it.
Wow.
It caved away after I'd driven over it with a sand spreader.
And since then, a stone-lined passageway and another cavern have been revealed.
Wow, that's deep.
Nobody knows what these chambers and tunnels were actually used for. Were they storage pits, places of refuge, or something more spiritual? And the team aren't just bringing their great knowledge and expertise. They've got some new toys to help us to unravel the mysteries of the fogou hidden beneath our feet.
And in the true spirit of Time Team, of course, we have just 3 days to do it.
Boden is on the Lizard Peninsula, near the mouth of the Hayford River, which was once an important trade route for the Cornish tin and copper industry going back into prehistory. The fogou is one of 14 that have been discovered in the region and is believed to have been constructed in the middle of the Iron Age, about 400 BC. Since its discovery, site director James Gossip has revealed an L-shaped passageway leading from the cavern that Chris found to another deeper cavern at the other end.
We have these lovely rock-cut steps leading down into it.
The team are combining traditional tools.
My grandfather's shovel.
The cavalry's arrived.
Yeah.
With cutting-edge technology to get inside the fogou to help us to find out how big it is and where these tunnels lead to. John Gator's geophys team have started early, using the latest magnetometry and radar equipment to go beyond the fogou, because this site has produced evidence of occupation from the Bronze Age to the post-Roman. We've got 3 days. What can we hope to achieve?
Oh, shall I show you what we've done already?
Please, I would love to.
So I've already done
Wow.
some of the geophysics. Yes, we can ignore that because that's the scaffolding tower. But what we're interested in are all these ditches around the fogou. And we've got this rectilinear enclosure. We may have a pathway leading to the fogou here. But this is the core area of interest to start with.
We're hoping, because we've seen, you know, where your big red dot is and our scaffolding, we've got a very interesting side passage to the fogou there, which we think is curving northwards and connecting potentially with this enclosure ditch.
So what we've decided to start with is focus on the fogou. We're going to put trench one in here, which is to try and see whether this big square enclosure is indeed the same date as the fogou, and try and connect it with it, see how it relates to it. We might find more unknown cut and covered tunnel, another extension, another passage to the fogou if we're really lucky.
Yeah. Where we've looked at it already, it is incredibly deep. So there is a chance, of course, that it descends deeper underground and becomes part of a tunnel.
Matt opens up our first trench, looking for a possible passageway connecting the enclosure ditch around the fogou to the deep cavern James found in the west.
Yeah, there's a lot of this, and there's a common saying here, which is only a stone.
Adam's scanning the fogou with his drone to create a 3D model which will allow the experts to view it virtually.
There we go. Look.
Yeah, starting to change.
Stop there for one quick second there, John. So the topsoil is coming off, and you can see it's just broken off there, hasn't it? And that's it. That's the beginnings of our level, and there.
Stewart, our landscape archaeologist, is exploring potential trade routes from the site to the sea.
But this red is basically where all the steep slopes and cliffs are, so all the way around the edge of the Lizard.
And Henry's found some evidence to show that the site is near one of the few landing places on the Lizard.
So when you actually look in to where we are, so there's the site just here,
Yeah.
and there's the channel just to the north. You can sort of see there are areas which you can come in. So depending on where you can harbour, the easiest route in, just based on slope, not vegetation or anything else, will be taking you straight up here, up to the site. But it's just so close to that.
Yeah. I wonder if there is a trackway that we could find. I'll have to go back and look at the photogrammetry.
And if there was trading here during the Iron Age, perhaps the Fogou could have been used for storage. In Trench 1, Matt and James are beginning to see signs of the enclosure ditch and a passageway that could link deep into the Fogou chamber.
James, we've gone a bit deeper than I thought we were going to go.
Me too.
But I think we've got an edge, haven't we?
We have. It's showing up. There's a really nice yellow natural, and we've got this nice brown stuff on one side, which looks like the fill. That looks pretty typical.
So that's the feature that came in that we saw on the mag, right?
Yeah.
On the
Well, that's what I'm hoping. You know, we don't know for definite yet, but hopefully it will be.
And it comes down here, and we should have the enclosure ditch coming straight across here. And we stopped at this level because look, there's that yellow natural.
Yeah, so
Nice brown, soft fill.
that should be the edge of the ditch, around about there, hopefully.
I think we need to probably give this another couple of scrapes because we've got one edge there. Well, there's that yellow stuff again there. And so hopefully, should be about there, shouldn't we?
Should be. Make it very narrow.
So this is the first hint in the ground that the enclosure ditch might possibly link to the Fogou. There's a very well-preserved Fogou in Carnuni in West Cornwall, which could give us an idea of what our Fogou might have looked like. The tunnel at Carnuni ends in a round chamber, which appears to have some sort of central altar. Chris, the landowner, has agreed to lift the metal cover protecting the void so that we can scan inside the Fogou chamber to see if it was a round cavern like Carnuni or a different sort of chamber altogether.
It looks sort of suitably mysterious, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. I'm very much enjoying the full haunted house cobwebbery.
People must have lived near the Fogou while it was in use, so Carenza and John are considering putting our second trench in over a circular feature on the geophys, which might be an Iron Age roundhouse.
We've talked about whether this circular feature is a hut circle or a ring ditch. Do you have any thoughts?
Well, most people are thinking that it's a sort of hut circle. I mean, I don't know. James dug that, and that was a Bronze Age roundhouse, as far as I understand. So there's lots of magnetic noise. There's lots of rubbish burning going on. This ring
It's very different.
is certainly different. It could just be a barrow.
That little dark blob in the middle could potentially be a grave, couldn't it?
Well, I mean, we've got to dig it.
Before we can put trench 2 in, metal detectorists make sure we're not missing anything in the topsoil. They discovered our first find of the dig, which might give us some dating evidence.
Now you can tell straight away from its green corrosion that it's got some copper in the alloy. And it's round and it's flat, so it could be a coin. And from its size and the fact that it's a copper alloy, I'm guessing that it might be, I'm hoping that it might be a Roman coin.
How amazing.
What we've got to do is ask advice from Brigid, our conservator, and find out what she says we can do. I mean, generally, very light mechanical cleaning with some water to soften the soil should be fine. The thing I'd also like to do, which we've never been able to do before on a time team, is once it's clean, we can pop it under the portable XRF machine, X-ray fluorescence, but that can tell us the composition. So it will definitely have copper in it.
Wow.
But what else does it have? It'll be an alloy with something like either zinc, which would make it a brass, or tin, which would make it a bronze.
Yes.
And if it is a Roman coin, then the composition, the alloy, will help us determine the denomination, because
Wow.
some are brass, some are bronze.
So we could work out the denomination, we could work out the period, and there's just so much that could come out of that one coin. If this really is a Roman coin, how does it relate to the Iron Age roundhouse we're hoping to find in Trench 2? James has discovered a number of Romano-British features and finds over the years, and if John and Carenza are right, there's a possibility of something Roman and possibly rare in Victor's field near the Dome.
Now what we've done is we've extended the survey to the north into Victor's field, as it's called, and we've got this square enclosure and then this sort of, it might be a Cornish round settlement site, but what date this is, I haven't got a clue.
Well, you look at this, don't you? And the thing that immediately jumps to mind is Roman temple, isn't it? That sort of, so it's about 20 metres across, is or a temple enclosure.
Yeah.
That's the sort of size and shape. We've got places like Maiden Castle on Iron Age sites, but of course we need some dating evidence from it. Do you think it's it looks a massive feature on the geophys, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a massive feature in the ground, does it?
I think it's going to be a steep-sided ditch.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to do it to go across one of the main ditches and take in these two pits. I mean, if that is a Roman site, then that's going to be pretty rare, isn't it?
The location is perfect.
The site certainly holds a commanding position, with connection to the sea to the north and within sight of the Bronze Age barrows of Goonhilly Downs and Roscruga Beacon to the south. So could this hill and the Iron Age Fogou have had a ritual ceremonial significance? It's a question that James has been wrestling with for years.
This is like a rock-cut tunnel. It's definitely connected to the rest of the Fogou, the stone-lined bit.
Yes.
But we've got no idea what it's for, what it's doing. I don't really buy the storage idea, unless perhaps it's the sort of commodity that was incredibly precious, and therefore getting it out of here is made deliberately difficult. And now clambering over these rocks, we don't know whether these are, collapsed rocks or whether they're put here deliberately to, impede passage, but it would have been really awkward. So now we're in this section of nice dry stone walling. Yeah, and then we come across this monster. It's one of our capping stones, one of our big capping stones that would have formed the roof of the Fogou
Right,
passage.
so this would have all been covered over?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
And that
one of
one's
them has fallen in, and it's just been far too difficult for them to lift it out. And so it's stayed here for 2,500 years.
Yeah. So I'm not imagining this, am I? It gets narrower around head height.
Yeah, it looks like, you can see it along this whole section of the passage. We've got this lovely stone walling which is corbelled as it reaches the top.
Yep.
And corbelling is where they start to overlap each other to narrow the space at the top.
This feels like a liminal moment. Is this a doorway, a gateway into a new
passage
world?
from one space into another.
Yep.
Well, I think you're right. You've got these two lovely uprights, which are particularly nice, shiny kind of quartz with the corbelled roof above them, or corbelled walls above them. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely some sort of entranceway.
Okay, but I have a question. When you look back, this now looks like a dead end. It's almost as if we're not supposed to know that there's something.
Yeah, and
down
perhaps
there.
that's very deliberate. It is such a sharp right angle.
It really is.
And that's really unique in, in Fogous.
For you, is this space perhaps ceremonial?
I quite like that idea because they're very difficult spaces to use in other ways.
Yes.
To the
because you
modern
can't
mind.
get a cart down here.
You can't get
easily.
a cart down here. But yeah, and I think there's been a lot of investment in time, energy, selection of special rocks, all those sorts of things, which suggests that something a little bit more special is going on than something that's purely practical. We always suspected there was a side passage here between these two big stones. The trench got deeper and deeper. We discovered these rock-cut steps, and it descended into a rock-cut tunnel, really lovely pick marks down the sides of the walls, and it starts to turn around, starts to curve. We think it might match the geophysical anomaly that we're looking at now in Trench 1. So it could be one of those, another access point from what would have been the open enclosure ditch into the Fogou from that direction.
If I say the word labyrinthine, do you pelt me with pebbles or is it fine?
No, I think I like it.
So James's theory is that the rock-cut chamber he was standing in connects via a tunnel with a perimeter ditch in Matt's trench, where there's an exciting development.
What you got, Matt?
Well, James, it's every archaeologist's dream to find a tunnel or something exciting like that, and Graham was just troweling away here, and the soil just fell away, and it looks like we've got a void or something there. Now, I don't want to make any assumptions, but we are next to the Fogou, aren't we?
We are. And I can see that you've got the edge here of something coming along.
Yeah, now that we've cleaned back, we've got a really nice edge of that feature here, which goes round towards the Fogou. And across here, we've got a lovely edge there and a lovely edge there. And we know that the enclosure ditch is this way, isn't it?
Yeah, brilliant.
So could this hole be the first sign of an entranceway into the Fogou from the enclosure ditch?
Hang on. The void is basically completely filled with this soft kind of silt that's kind of accumulated off the sides, isn't it? It's difficult, until we empty that, we're not really going to be able to tell how big the void is. So we're going to have to, I think we're going to have to take the edge off the ditch there, and then we've got a bit more of this top stuff off. We can start exploring a bit further.
This trench also gave us a nice piece of pottery.
This is what we call Cornish Gabriel, and this is a flanged bowl. If you look very carefully, you can see there's a flange on the side and the seating for the bowl.
Yep.
So it'd have been about that wide originally.
Okay.
And this is specifically dates from around about the sort of 3rd to 4th centuries AD.
Okay.
So the later Roman
So quite
period.
late, yep.
And you know, this is what they were making here locally out of the clay from the lizard, the gabbro. And they said the little white spots on the surface are feldspar crystals, and that's what makes it very distinctive.
This piece of pottery was found in the spoil heap, and we're determined not to miss any valuable finds, however small.
See, that looks promising already.
So Naomi, our environmental archaeologist, has brought a flotation tank to search in the soil from the Fogou for the very tiniest pieces of evidence that could help us work out what was going on there.
So if we get my glamorous gloves on. So this is quite a dark sample, so there's a possibility there is charcoal and things in this already, which is a good sign. Here we go. Here we go. Yep. That's a carbonised grain.
Already.
That's a carbonised grain. Oh, look.
Yeah,
this is it. This is it.
Fantastic.
There you go, Carenza. There's a piece of pottery.
There we are. Look at that.
Fantastic. So where there's one bit, there's surely more.
Tiny bits of pottery can give us dates. Charcoal and carbonised grains can help us piece together an idea of how people were living here, what they were growing, and what they were eating. Pete's joined Helen in Trench 2, where we're looking for an Iron Age roundhouse. We might have found our first signs of archaeology.
Well, yeah, that would. If we are on the level, they do look like possible post holes. Let's take this end down a bit more in line with where you already are.
Post holes could indicate a fence line, so maybe we're near our roundhouse. Now that John's had a chance to look at the radar of the Fogou, he's able to travel down through the earth to see what archaeology might lurk there.
So, look, there's the curve of the fence.
Got it.
The
Yep.
Fogou. And this is the topsoil.
Yep.
And we're going down
Through the layers.
through the layers.
Yep.
And so as we get deeper, suddenly you start to see the big enclosure there,
Yeah.
and then you start to see parallel wall lines here.
Yep.
You go even deeper features coming through here, those parallel walls continue, a possible square enclosure there, a round feature there. We're basically seeing every 2 centimetres into the ground. And what you realise is how much buried archaeology there is. There's just so much going on, and to understand it geophysically is quite difficult. For James to understand it archaeologically, I think he's got the more difficult job.
John's survey suggests features going deep into the ground, and in Victor's field, it clearly shows the square enclosure we're hoping to find in Trench 4, not far from the ground surface.
Well, we started to examine this area now, where this possible Roman temple, which we're referring to it as at the moment, we're not sure what it is, but that's the working hypothesis at the moment. These responses on here are so strong, there's got to be something down there. Whether it's a Roman temple, that's another question.
Most Roman activity on this site has been in the southernmost corner, where the Meneage Archaeology Group are working.
It's cracked, but it's quite interesting.
Oh, but it's so much easier to
Yes,
see what it is.
it is, absolutely.
Just when you look inside it, you can see it's definitely pottery.
They're putting in a series of test pits near to an area where they've found a Romano-British structure and pits that might be burials. The team have been digging on this site since James first started working here.
Lots of volunteers helped me from the local community, and really they were so enthused by it all, they didn't want to go away. So we formed the Meneage Archaeology Group in 2008, and since then we've been slowly exploring Chris's land up here. There's just so much up here and it's so complex. And obviously I couldn't have done any of this over the past 18 years without them. So, I mean, they're fundamental to everything, really.
15-year-old Harvey has been working on this site for 3 years and has been bitten by the archaeology bug.
I found lots of Gabriel pottery just in this little test pit.
Right. Do you think it's coming out of a feature of some sort?
I don't know yet because it's all quite rocky. But
yeah, I think you've got a way to go yet, haven't you?
Yeah.
One of Harvey's favourite discoveries was a shale bracelet dating to the Iron Age. The site has produced finds from Neolithic to post-Roman. One of the most spectacular is a Roman find from a Gaulish Samian-ware vessel, impressed with the erotic scene of a dancer with a scarf and the god Pan. It's one of the largest found in Cornwall and dates to the latter part of the 2nd century AD. Using photogrammetry like this, we're able to enhance detail that's hard to see with the naked eye. And we're hoping that it will help us to understand the Fogou too. By late afternoon, Adam has managed to create a model showing all the passageways that James has exposed. Landscape investigators Derek and Lawrence are trying LiDAR, laser scanning technology, to show us inside the tunnels that are too small or too dangerous to access.
What it's doing is firing out thousands of laser beams, and it can pull those points together and create a 3D map of the Fogou.
And John's testing new equipment that might not look high-tech, but it allows him to see under the ground in real time.
I think it's the first it's been used in the UK. To be honest, to be able to see the results on the screen instantly like this is, yeah, something pretty special.
Derek and Lawrence are feeding back all this information to Ray San in New Zealand.
Good morning.
Morning, guys.
Who's attempting to pull together all the data into a 3D reconstruction of the Fogou.
Because there would have been the big stones for the top, the corbelling across the top, wouldn't they?
Absolutely. And to give you an idea of the sort of the scale of some of the stones that we get, can you see this beautiful entrance to the tunnels here?
Yep.
Yeah, really big stones. Really big stones. I mean, that's about 1/2 metre tall. To move those stones would have been pretty good going. But to move so many is quite impressive as well.
So Ray Sam, for your reconstruction,
Do we have-
worth us getting pictures and scans of some of the repurposed fence stones and some of the lintels that are just kicking around?
Yeah, it'd be lovely to reuse them actually in the reconstruction, so to speak. To actually take those models of them and prop them into what we think is the right
take
place.
the fence posts and put them back on top. It'll be incredible.
Brilliant. And the floor is just trodden earth, is it?
Yeah. Apart from here, where you've got stone cut steps. I don't know if you can see those, but this stepping isn't an artifact of excavation. These are actual steps that have been created and cut into the rock by the Iron Age inhabitants.
So that's another entrance to the Fogou, is it? Stepping down into it?
It's going off to another tunnel which heads directly towards Matt's trench over here. So we're hoping to be able to find out how they relate and how they connect up.
These are great, absolutely brilliant.
Adam's photogrammetry also provides the archaeologists with another way to record and examine their trenches during and after the dig. By the end of day one, Trench 1 is offering the exciting prospect of a new entrance and intriguing tunnels leading into the Fogou. Trench 2 has a line of some post holes, maybe from a fence around an Iron Age roundhouse. But in Trench 4, there's not much sign of a Roman temple.
We've got our first find, a little piece of probably Victorian pottery. Not the most exciting, but it is our first.
Tomorrow we're delving further back into the Bronze Age, to a shape on the geophysics that might be a roundhouse. It's next to one that James discovered, which produced a vast number of finds, including one of the largest Bronze Age pots ever discovered in Cornwall, and this extraordinary dagger.
Time Team is 100% independent and funded by our incredible fans. Want us to make more episodes? Joining Patreon gives you access to exclusive interviews, 3D models, masterclasses, and more. And you get to have your say in the process as we develop new sites.
Here in Boden, we're investigating a network of mysterious prehistoric caverns and passages known as a Cornish Fogou, dating back to about 400 BC.
It's every archaeologist's dream to find a tunnel, and it looks like we've got a void or something there. Now, I don't want to make any assumptions, but we are next to the Fogou, aren't we?
We're also looking for signs of an Iron Age settlement.
If we are on the level, they do look like possible post holes.
We're using brand new state-of-the-art technology to get us into places we couldn't previously go and to build a 3D model of a Fogou.
I think it's the first it's been used in the UK. Yeah, something pretty special.
And we've got some intriguing finds.
How amazing. We've got some glorious weather to greet us at the beginning of day 2. And where day 1 was Fogous, today has already begun to reveal something different. Possibly something Roman.
And it's not just any old Roman story we're hoping to discover. The experts believe this square feature might just be an enclosure ditch around a Roman temple, which could be hugely important, a unique discovery in Cornwall.
It's very unusual. We're not used to seeing these very square enclosures in Cornwall. If it was a really big square enclosure, you might say, oh, that's a Roman fort or something like that. But we don't get those down here, really, either.
The ditch is beginning to emerge.
Yeah, that looks much nicer through here.
It does, yeah. It's much stronger colour.
Much more like a ditch.
Yeah, it does.
But it could be the 2 large pits that actually hold the crucial evidence.
What might that be? Come on, give me some
Okay, well,
clues.
Ambiguously, we'd just say these look like pits. But pits can be used for all sorts of reasons.
That's
You could put rubbish in pits.
Oh, wow.
You could put bodies in pits.
Okay, I like that.
or you could plant some huge, great totemic pole or something.
I like
at the
that very much.
Pete's already hard at it in Trench 2.
Hi, Pete.
Yay!
You got to work early this morning?
Where he's looking for an Iron Age roundhouse. And he's found a ditch and what could be a boundary or fence line.
Oh, that's fantastic, isn't it? They're really good, solid, dark brown splodges.
We're still hunting for the roundhouse, but the finds have produced a piece of pottery dating from the 1st century BC to the 1st century AD.
This is such a perfect sherd, isn't it? I mean, you could almost draw the whole pot from it.
Carl identifies this as part of a cooking vessel that would have been used in the later Iron Age. Damnonii tribes inhabited Devon and Cornwall during this period and remained in control throughout the first Roman invasion by Caesar in 54 BC and Claudius's incursion 100 years later.
When he arrives, he invades in 43 with elephants, which always makes me really happy.
Do it in style.
Yeah, I mean, because you assume that the people who lived here were like, that's the biggest thing we've ever seen. Up to this point, the biggest thing we'd ever seen was a goat. How's this happen? It's probably a horse. But yeah, I mean, when the Romans get here, they spread across, you know, in all different sort of directions. They have incredible incursions into Wales. They make it up, obviously, to Hadrian's Wall eventually is built the following century. But Cornwall is a long way to get across. And yet, you know, they knew it was worth coming here because Cornwall had this reputation for being a source of tin,
well, yeah.
which is incredibly valuable, of course, incredibly useful. It's probably fair to say that the reason they can get so many tribal leaders to conspire with them, collaborate with them, is because your standard of living probably goes up a bit. You know, so you've lived in pre-industrial Britain. Here's what you've eaten forever: turnips. I mean, it's and then the Romans appear with olive oil. And you'd be like, oh, hang on, wait, I can fry this? Are you sure it's not in pig lard? Are you confident of that?
Cornwall was exposed to other cultures from prehistory because of the international trade in tin and copper. As early as 300 BC, the Greek explorer Pytheas sailed around Britain, starting with Cornwall, and reported that the natives were very civilized, perhaps because of their contact with the wider world.
So I'm sensing that Britain's actually quite multicultural, counter to everything that one would expect.
Absolutely. So there's evidence from the later Roman Empire for around the time, so 3rd, 4th century, so around the time of coins that have been found on this site,
yes.
That by that time, roughly 1/5 of people in Britain are long-distance migrants, i.e. not from Europe.
The Helford River was important for both tin and copper, going back before the Roman and Iron Age to the Bronze Age. This dagger, which the Meneage team found in a roundhouse at Boden, dates to around 1300 BC. It's an example of how Cornish tin and copper found on the Lizard were combined to create bronze, a new, stronger, harder metal alloy. John spotted something on the geophys that could be a second roundhouse next to the one where the dagger was found, and Matt is opening up a new trench to investigate whether it too is Bronze Age.
What do you reckon? Do you reckon that looks like pot? Before I touch it. Pot. Oh, yeah. Got a bit of pot, finally.
By mid-morning on day 2, we have 4 trenches on the go, looking for features from Bronze Age to Roman. And now James and Stewart want to open up yet another, over a well which Chris has found, packed with finds from Neolithic to Roman.
Some nice bits of pottery, a pot lug, you know, nice bits of pottery.
Wow.
And John's brought out his new toy to confirm its location.
Just now we're starting to see some really strong reflections.
Oh, yeah.
And that, I believe, is your well, ritual shaft, or whatever. And now we're past it.
Have we got an idea of total depth there?
Well, the top is at about 0.8 metres.
Yeah.
The bottom, I haven't got a clue.
Okay.
That's for you to find out. And I wish you luck getting down to Australia.
If this is a ritual shaft, the objects found inside could tell us something about the significance of this site.
Bridge, were you there? Oh, look at you!
Helen's in the Mick-mobile on a call with the Time Teens conservator Brigid, who's in New Zealand.
The first thing that popped into our heads when we saw this yesterday was, oh God, we need Bridge.
She wants advice as to how best to prepare the possible coin for examination with the XRF machine, which we hope will help us to identify and to date it.
Yeah, so if you've got some deionized water, or actually Evian is what I used to use in the field. It had a pretty good chemical formula on the side of the bottle. And if you put a 50-50 mix with acetone.
Oh, okay, right.
And then you very carefully swab the area that you just want to put that XRF onto is the best thing to do with it. I probably wouldn't recommend at the moment, you know, doing the whole lot. If you're wanting to use it just for the purpose of the XRF, just using a little bit of cotton wool on the toothpick and just doing a little light swab. And the reason that you're adding the acetone is it speeds up the evaporation rate of the water.
I see.
I wish everything we were looking for was marked by an iron pin and some concrete to get us going. We're looking for the axe.
John's radar has meant Stewart and James have already rediscovered Chris's well and are now lifting the lid to see what lies beneath. If the well contains offerings to the gods, it could tell us more about how people lived here and what was important to them. So far, we've been a bit short of finds, but Matt's beginning to sense his luck change in Trench 9, where he's found a piece of local pottery with a particular significance to the site.
So this is it.
Look at that. That's a huge thing as well.
Yeah, it's chunky, isn't it?
And you can see from the side just this sort of rough texture in the clay.
That's it. It was used to make the pottery in the Iron Age and the Romano-British period, and it's a type of material, so it's this clay with lots of inclusions, little kind of gritty bits in it. Yeah. The general feeling is it's Iron Age, so, you know, it's a bit too late for us, but I think we're on the right track. There's stuff coming up, and we're just starting to get what could be the edge there, so yeah, it's looking good.
And I'm just looking forward to seeing what else you might be able to pull out. I mean, are there other things that have come out?
We're getting a few of these pebbles. These wouldn't be found within this field naturally, so these have definitely been brought in here by somebody, probably as a part of the clay process.
How amazing.
So it's all here, Gus.
It's all here.
We just haven't really got to put it together.
It's trying to make sense of it.
Come back this afternoon, Gus. I'll have a Bronze Age roundhouse for you.
Okay, I'm going to hold you to that, Matt.
Chris has gone some way down the well.
It's gone down. It's hitting another stone at the bottom, so 3 foot, I guess. Sorry, metre.
And it's beginning to look like it might hold some ritual significance.
What about this, James?
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Well, that is more interesting. I'm pretty sure that's a quern fragment, which fits with all those little bits we had there before.
Yeah. And this querns are used for grinding cereal, aren't they?
Yeah, grinding wheat. So, I mean, it is a smallish fragment, of course, but it's an interesting granite.
Flat sides there.
Yeah, very flat sides. Pretty,
Well,
you can feel how all the crystals rounded off and everything.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
And this idea that sometimes querns are deliberately broken and thrown in to seal.
Yeah, well, you know, perhaps the significance of cereal processing has led people to, you know, make something special of this shaft, you know, after.
I mean, if you had a
use.
really bad winter or something, Chris, and all your crops had died and your cattle had wandered off, breaking a quern or something like that could be the sort of thing somebody might do in the past, mightn't it?
I would just go and bury my head in my hands and say, oh, woe is me.
Well, it's interesting, all the stuff that you told me that had come out, like the axe, it's come out the ground, and we know there's ceremonial, granite, They seem like materials that might have that context.
Well, even the
don't they?
pottery, you know, with that connection of Gabbroic clay with the, you know, the local area here, you know, all of it really, so connected to the ground.
Interesting stuff, isn't it?
So could it be that grain production was important to the story of Boden during the Roman period? Helen's hoping that she too can add to this story if she can prove that this is a Roman coin by scanning it with the XRF machine.
Shall we have a look?
If you think that's dry enough.
Yeah, we can give it a go.
I'll just pop it into your hand.
Yeah.
So you don't. There we go.
Yeah. So the wonderful thing about the portable XRF is it's got an inbuilt camera, so we can make sure we're on a nice clean bit, and we can line it up with the bit you've just cleaned. And what it will do, it'll fire an X-ray stream into the artefact, which is why we'll close this lid. Nice
That's
and
the
tight.
equivalent of leaving the room at the dentist.
Yeah,
is it?
yeah. So
Yes.
we're safe now. This is
Right.
behind a protective shield. So it'll fire an X-ray stream at the artefact and it'll energise it at an atomic level, which then fires out characteristic rays, which allow you to look at the individual elements within the artefact. So if we press start, we'll see the data coming in immediately. So we've got a little bit of iron, but that's probably from the soil and the muck. Really
Yes,
useful.
I can spot something immediately.
So we've
Can we go
got,
back? There we go.
Copper is obviously the biggest element in there, which is to be
yes.
expected with the corrosion. A little bit of iron, as I've said, but the secondary element is zinc.
That is just brilliant. I'm really pleased.
The XRF machine has confirmed that the object is made of the same brass used in Roman coins, which means that Helen can now go to a coin specialist to find out more.
Gosh, what a fantastic thing. I really, really want one.
The coin came from near Trench 2, where we've now found the ditch around what could be a late Iron Age roundhouse.
So the inside of the roundhouse, the surface looks a lot different to the outside natural, so do you think that could be a floor surface?
Yeah, it could be. It's nice rounded stone, perhaps it had a beaten earth floor or something on it.
That'd be really exciting.
And that has a sort of lip like that.
Yeah, I can see that.
I'm trying to see if I can make out a design on the coin, to see if I can try to help to identify it.
And when you lift it up, the beauty of, as you say, Helen, being able to handle it, is that you can see a slight sort of shadow that is curving round in that direction.
The Meneage team have been hard at work in Trench 4, where we've found the square enclosure ditch, which we think surrounded a Roman temple, and we're on the hunt for 2 large pits, which might contain valuable clues.
Carl! Doesn't look Roman to me.
No.
Later
No.
prehistoric, my guess.
It's quite crude, heavily abraded. I think this is Bronze Age.
Bronze Age.
Bronze Age.
So that, I mean, it's right at the top of this feature. So if that as a square feature with pits like this in the Bronze Age, that's
not right.
completely unheard of.
Yes.
It might not support the Roman temple theory, but pottery like this has been found all over the site and dates from around 1300 BC.
And some of these are so beautiful.
Yes, this is imprinted cord, but this sort of pottery is, and it's quite rare in archaeology that you can almost get close to an individual. Can you see that there? You've got fingernail decoration where they've impressed their fingernails.
Of course, these are objects of utility, but it's also that they were making things that are absolutely beautiful. I mean, that these marks across the surface, that they are obviously about art as well as about...
It's certainly visual, and has been speculated that some of the varied patterns may represent individual families as well.
Because some of these things are huge, aren't they, Carl?
Yeah, well-
There's something like this.
This comes from roughly the same sort of size vessel as the one drawn here,
Which is what
which,
sort of
which
scale?
I've reconstructed conservatively. It comes up to my waist, so the mouth is there, and it would have been about that wide.
Gabbroic clay was used in local pottery from the Bronze Age throughout the Roman period. The reason lies in its special properties, which meant that it was less likely to crack in firing. We've dug some from a local source, and we've invited experimental archaeologist and potter Angie Wickenden to demonstrate some of the techniques that Bronze Age potters might have used.
This is what we call short. It's got a lot of
short like pastry,
pastry.
It might crack.
It's cracking up. It's really difficult making pots with gabbro at this stage.
Fresh gabbro clay is difficult to work, so Angie believes that prehistoric potters would have stored it in the ground for months to increase its plasticity.
That's much better, isn't it?
Yeah, much softer, and the grit is much tinier.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have the sort of chunks in it at all. Is it easier to make it really
Yeah,
much
look,
thinner?
You've done it.
Compared
there you
with
go.
that one.
Yeah. You see how that's
can
different?
press it to a much thinner texture.
The pots would have been built up from bases by coiling the clay.
You're going to put the coil on the inside there.
Yep.
And you're going to smooth it down to attach it with your thumb.
Okay.
And then you're going to put it up on top and smooth it down on the inside, like that.
Then pebbles like the ones from Matt's trench were used to smooth the inside.
I've got a pebble, now use the round bit and smooth that on the inside.
Oh, it's working.
Angie's experimented with many different tools and thinks that the decoration on pottery here would have been made using twisted wool or perhaps nettles.
Yep. And you just split the nettle open, take out the pith, and there's fibres inside. And you make the cordage by just twisting it like this.
And so you end up with this.
And you end up with this string.
Yep.
And you kind of get the best part of the string, not where it's unravelling, and you lay it on the clay, and with your fingertips, you press it in.
Right.
Like that. And push it into the clay with your fingernails. I wonder whether they pushed it in with the bone tools as well. They did lots of chevrons, created these patterns on the pots. So that's really good. You see, you're such a confident potter, Bronze Age potter.
Yes, I am. And I'm getting a T-shirt that says that.
Given how time-consuming the process is, Angie thinks that the huge Bronze Age pots found on this site would have been made by more than one person. Carenza's putting in Trench 5 on the highest point in Victor's Field over a curvilinear feature that could be an enclosed settlement from the Iron Age or Romano-British period, known as a Cornish Round.
Well, that's looking like a bit of burnt stone there, and that's definitely fired clay of some sort there. I'm not sure if that's a bit pottery or whether it's a bit of daub from the wall of a building or something.
Just next door, Stewart and Henry have climbed above the tree line to see what the land would have looked like during the Iron Age when the Fogou was in use. This hilltop was clearly a place strategically important for trade routes going out to sea, but also spiritually, as it's surrounded by Bronze Age barrows visible on the horizon. So, was the Fogou here because of the trade routes, or because of the ritual significance of the site, or both? A better picture of the cavern that Chris found originally and how it was accessed might help us answer this question.
But what we want to do is see whether this void, which opened up initially and was originally covered with the metal plate, whether there's any connection between that void and this ditch coming through here. So my radar trace has come across this line. We can see the ditch, as I said, and these weaker responses, but still pretty clear, suggest that the void does continue through at a similar depth, and it looks as though it may well join with that.
If John's right, the void was accessible from both the outer enclosure ditch and the Fogou's stone-lined passageway, and might have been a huge cavern similar to Carn Uni. But the data from Lawrence's scans are suggesting something different.
So we can see the entrance to the tunnel just here. These are the timber frames just holding and propping it up. If we spin it round into
side view, you can see that tunnel is lower than the ground surface with these white dots along the top here. But more interestingly, it's coming off parallel with the main hallway channel to the Fogou itself. So whilst John's picking up features that are potentially running this way, the 3D data suggests it might be running this way. So there's a bit of contrast and conflict around what it is that we're actually seeing.
Why would it
come back on?
Go back on itself.
We're hoping more detailed scanning will help us work out whether the cavern becomes bigger or turns into a passageway.
So therefore, if the stones go...
Stuck your scanner down there?
We haven't, but we can and we will fill it in.
Things are a little clearer in Trench 1, where we've found the enclosure ditch and a passageway to the cavern at the other end of the Fogou. We're now trying to work out if they connect.
Abby, found 2 stones here, not joined.
Yeah, if we just clean around them.
Lovely.
Right, so the Fogou is over there.
Yes.
And I was there yesterday with James, and we were hoping that very deep, alarming passage that he clambered down into, and I watched him, would curve round and meet us here. And it sort of looks like it has.
Yes. So Ryan's in the first slot. We put a slot across what we think is the side passage, and it's looking very likely.
And the trench next to Ryan, what's happening there?
That is a slot looking at the relationship between the side passage and the enclosure ditch, seeing if they were contemporary, if they met up, if they blocked the end of the passage with stone.
So what happens next, Abby? It looks like, are you just making Ryan do all the digging on his own? At the moment it's looking like a very solo endeavour. It's group work, is it, archaeology? Doesn't look like it from Ryan's perspective, that's all I'm saying.
I'll give him a hand later.
All right then.
To help us get a sense of what these tunnels might have looked like, Lawrence has been looking for the stones that might have formed part of the corbelled ceiling.
Maybe you can reconstruct them and put the exact stones in a place where they may have been.
Well, I think it'd be lovely to do that, wouldn't it? I think if we can actually lift them from where they've landed and move them to a close spot and reuse them, even if it's only virtually, I think there's a virtue in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Using the Fogou at Caen Uni for reference, Ray San will try to restore the huge stones to their rightful positions.
So I'm still trying to get my head around the idea of you've got these big heavy stones, and I assume they've got earth above them as well, a level of it. So are we seeing, when you're on the ground, a pronounced lump above the features? Or is it actually the ground level is even across above them?
That capping stone we were looking at is just at the end of the area here. I don't know if you can see that with my mouse.
Yep.
And then so this is the floor surface. We've got the coursing of the stones to make the passageway, and then this is the foot or two of earth that I mentioned that's found above it. This is deeper than I am at all, and it's, as you say, it's a crouched down, huddling experience. It would have been very dark. It would have been quite claustrophobic with the capping stones on the top, I think.
Raysan's reconstruction will also have to make sense of the different building techniques used below ground. Above ground in Trench 2, there's a dispute about whether we're looking at an Iron Age roundhouse or a Bronze Age barrow.
We've got a ring feature in the magnetics that's as clear as daylight, about 8 or 9 metres wide in diameter. That's what we've got in the trench.
And that makes it a what?
Well, I think it's a ring ditch that isn't to do with habitation. It's probably a barrow, a burial.
James, do you agree with that?
Well, I'm not convinced. That kind of diameter, I was expecting it to be a roundhouse, maybe late Iron Age, Romano-British roundhouse. And I'm still of that opinion, I think.
Are you feeling that this is a ditch that has been dug or a ditch that has been worn away, or both?
When we talk about an eave strip, is it a deliberately dug drainage?
It's a deliberately dug drainage or enclosure, in fact. So perhaps it's acting as both. It's not necessarily just taking the water from the roof, but also to provide some quarry material, which might have created a bit of a low wall inside the ditch for a building.
But where's the central hearth? Where's the pottery?
This is the other side of it here, isn't it?
Yeah, something like that.
That's quite a sort of domestic sort of size, isn't it?
Yeah.
Bronze Age barrows tend to be fairly large, but they can be an immense variety of sizes, can't they, James?
They can, but around here I wouldn't expect them to be this small.
So I'm beginning to feel that this is getting to be the kind of argument that can only be solved in one way, and that is not by pistols at dawn and not by the evidence of this.
Dear.
It's by digging the rest of it.
Okay.
If we can find the centre of the ring ditch, we just might find a hearth or a burial to tell us whether we've got an Iron Age roundhouse or a Bronze Age barrow. The sun's going down on day 2, and I'm hoping Matt has lived up to his promises in Trench 9.
We started this trench looking for a Bronze Age roundhouse, and I did promise you, Gus, didn't I?
Have you found my roundhouse?
We have found this amazing burnt soft silt layer there going round. We've got an arc of it going round here, going round here, going round here, and I reckon that's the edge of our roundhouse.
Oh my.
And look, best of all, we have a post hole, that circle there, which would be along the edge of the roundhouse. So yeah, I reckon I've fulfilled my promise to you.
How you have? I mean, that is thrilling. And so for tomorrow, what's the plan then?
Well,
what do you think?
You can see how the silt is kind of sloping downwards. I think the fills of the roundhouse have sunk down inwards, so we're getting deeper and deeper. All this stuff that you're standing on, probably about a foot, needs to come out. So yeah, it's going to be a hard morning tomorrow.
Looking at these fills here, this is almost identical to the roundhouse we had just over there.
Wow.
These kind of, these burnt spreads with the charcoal in and the burnt clay, really, really similar. So yeah, it's really promising.
I think on the one over there was pottery laid down in the middle.
Wow.
So I reckon that's probably about maybe 30 centimetres below your feet.
Probably all down there. We had 600 odd finds from the roundhouse there. So who knows what we're going to find under this?
Who knows indeed. Just one day left. We've got to get to grips with a Bronze Age landscape, the mystery of an Iron Age Fogou, and the ring ditch in Trench 2. Not to mention the question of whether Boden was once the site of a unique Roman temple. It's a tall order.
Time Team is 100% independent and funded by our incredible fans. Joining Patreon gives you access to exclusive interviews, 3D models, masterclasses, and more. Please join us on this exciting journey. We need more support to make more episodes.
For the last 2 days, Time Team has been investigating an extraordinary network of Iron Age tunnels and caverns known as a Fogou here in Boden in Cornwall. With 1 day left, we're pretty sure we've found at least one new passageway.
It's coming off parallel with the main hallway channel to the Fogou itself.
We're hoping a square feature on John's geophys might be a rare Roman temple.
It's very unusual. We're not used to seeing these very square enclosures in Cornwall.
And we're travelling further back in time to the Bronze Age to see if we can find the start of the story here in Boden.
Tomorrow, in this trench, we'll have a beautiful, exposed Bronze Age roundhouse.
I'm going to hold you to that.
Everybody's up and at it early on day 3, in a bid to bring some clarity to an increasingly complicated story centred on the mysterious Iron Age Fogou and its spider web of passageways.
So that hole that goes down there goes off that way, does it, or do you not?
It seems to get really deep in that direction, but it doesn't join up with the Fogou there.
We've put a test pit in between the enclosure ditch and Chris's void to see if John's theory that they connect holds water. But I'm worried that we've got too many questions and too little time.
Trench 1 is just over there, and that's nearly done.
Yeah, and it's proved the connection between the Fogou passage and the enclosure ditch.
Yes. So that idea of this big enclosure here being related to the Fogou passage, yes, they definitely are.
But that's a tick, isn't it?
That's a tick.
Well done.
That's a tick, yeah. So then Trench 2 was on this circular feature. That's carrying on nicely, isn't it? We're still not sure if it's a house or a burial mound.
It could be either. We've got Trench 9 over there through the Bronze Age, potential Bronze Age house.
Which is getting lots of stuff out of it, so we need to keep people on that.
That's really exciting.
And then we've got Trench 4 and 5. So Trench 4 is...
so clear, this.
Exactly. So 4 we were thinking we were going to be able to sort it out easily.
Yes.
We found that ditch, but it's got no finds from it. So we want to carry on to see, we want to do a trench going into the middle of that, because if they're deliberately keeping the ditches clean, there may be something going on in the middle which will give us some more finds that we can date the whole kind of complex with. And then there's Trench 5, which we've just started.
And we found part of that ditch. I've just put David up there, so he's started on that
Great.
one.
And again, Gus, we're hoping we might be able to date that.
Amazing.
But it is all a bit confusing, and we are a bit light on finds that can help us date any of this.
Exactly.
I was hoping we'd be able to colour code all this with different dates.
Yeah, sorry about that.
James's previous work has suggested that the Fogou was constructed around 400 BC.
And if you could just... Have you ever used a trowel before?
I mean, I feel like this is the wrong time to say no, isn't it?
But we want to find out whether the enclosure ditch and the side passage were built at the same time. And Natalie's trying to help answer this question in Trench 1, where we're exposing a line of stones separating the two features.
Be a bit more vigorous. We will use the mattocks where we can, but for the fine detail, we don't want to get breaking these rocks. We don't want to lift these out. We just want to clear around them so that we can define where they are, and hopefully we might find that there are some more.
Oh, this bit's gone sort of chalky. I haven't broken it, Abby.
To get an accurate idea of the construction of the Fogou, we're combining data from the trenches with John's geophys, Adam's photogrammetry, and scans that Lawrence and Derek have been collecting.
I guess what's great about this is, whilst Adam's 3D photogrammetry is great for the above ground stuff, it can't get into the holes, it can't get into the nooks and crannies where it's underneath the ground. So we can stitch these data together and really feed into Rayson's 3D model, 3D reconstruction that's going to happen.
To really help, we can actually go to the different nodes and see a 360-degree image.
So we're heading in now.
Yeah.
And you'll notice as well the difference between the individual stones that have been made to build that passage versus this chamber, which has been cut into the living rock. So you from these
see it up around there.
Just coming in here as well. So different materials. They've dug deeper. They've gone into the living rock for this chamber versus using stone to make those passages that come into the chamber.
The chambers at Boden, which are carved into the rock, are very different to the stone-lined passageways. By contrast, the Fogou at Carn Uni is entirely stone-lined. One possible interpretation is that the stone-lined areas were designed to be seen, while the rock-cut areas were more practical. Over in Trench 9, Matt's digging down into the centre of what we think is a Bronze Age roundhouse and has discovered a piece of Treviska ware.
I was just having a chat with Carl, who's our local pottery expert, and his idea is that it's bits of wool that have been sort of drawn out, spun together, twisted, and then impressed into the clay before it's fired. Later on you end up with this wonderful decoration.
Absolutely wonderful. Because it may be my imagination, but you can see not just the horizontal lines, but little sort of vertical lines as well, which would be like the texture of... could you see here? All the way going down.
Oh yeah, quite. Yeah.
This is turning out to be my favourite trench. I'm not meant to have favourites, but I mean, look at this.
This technique is similar to the nettle decorations that Natalie and Angie were experimenting with yesterday. The pots they made are now ready to be fired, but they need to be warmed first, or all their hard work will go to waste.
Shame you can't feel this. That's actually starting to warm up slowly. There it goes.
There we go.
It's going. Can you hear that popping? There it goes. You can see it breaking at the
This
rim.
side it's broken.
Yeah. That's what you should do.
Sometimes there's little bits of kind of orange baked earth, but it's little flecks. There's not great lumps of it.
There's confusion in Trench 4. We've got to the bottom of the huge square ditch that we think just might be surrounding a Roman temple. The ditch is not quite as deep as John was anticipating based on the geophys.
So get Naomi to look at that.
Yeah, if we've got samples from the 2 layers, then yes.
Yeah, okay.
And the 2 pits which showed up so clearly seem far too small and too shallow.
See, what I would normally expect is if something that shallow is causing a response as big as the response that's in that ditch, then it would be heavily fired. It'd be something like a small half or so on.
Frustratingly, the mysterious pits are not revealing anything helpful about what the enclosure was, so we're pinning everything on the hope that there might be something diagnostic in the centre of the square.
Hi, James.
Hello. What have we got going on?
Well, thanks for coming over.
The Roundhouse Barrow debate continues in Trench 2, where something somewhat ghostly has materialised in the middle of the newly exposed ring ditch.
So we've got one curving end, another curving end, and plumb in the middle is this remarkable shiny feature here, which is a north-south spread of clay. Now, it's not just any clay. We've had Carl look at it, and he says it's Gabbroic clay, so it's come in from at least a couple of miles away. So that's something special and odd, and it's in the middle of what appears to be a ring ditch.
Yeah,
you can see where I'm going with this. Yes, but what is it? Now, if we half-section that lengthways and we minutely sample it and throw everything that Naomi has to get out of it at it, then hopefully we should be able to find out if it is the top of a grave.
Okay, well that would be quite fascinating because there's never been a Bronze Age burial here, so it'd really be something pretty special.
Bone preservation is poor in the soil at Boden, but Naomi is going to float the clay to search for evidence to confirm that this is a barrow. If so, it would suggest that the Fogou was placed in the centre of a Bronze Age landscape. And over in Trench 9, Matt has found exactly what he was hoping for in the middle of the Bronze Age roundhouse.
You've spotted it straight away, haven't you? So just to let you know where we are, this is the Roundhouse Interior. You can see there's burnt stuff everywhere. I think it's all collapsed in. What we were hoping for, we had in the other roundhouse, was all this delightful Treviska pottery laid out, and we have that bit there. What do you reckon? In fact, look.
Oh, there's another bit there. Oh, that's so cool. Wow, this is amazing, isn't it? Because you've got this wonderful burn in here, and these are huge chunks of pottery. And we've got an amazing opportunity here because this hasn't moved for about 3,500 years. And we've got the exterior of the pot here. The inside of the pot is buried within here. And so we've got an opportunity to maybe do some lipid analysis and maybe do some starch analysis. So for instance, if they were eating porridge for breakfast, we might get the remains of that. And that'd be fantastic to see what kind of foods were being eaten. And so what I'd love to do is come back when you're ready for it to be lifted. Please don't touch it. We'll come in, we don't want to contaminate it, and we'll get it all bagged up and sent off to the lab. That's so exciting.
And there may well be more of the pottery, as Matt continues to expose what seems to be a burnt demolition layer at the end of the life of the roundhouse.
I think I might know what this is.
In Trench 4, Rachel has found signs of something potentially very exciting in the middle of the square enclosure.
We've got something running through here. I think. And one here. These look like suspiciously like graves to me. I think we could have a Roman wall cemetery. Not what we want to find at this time of day.
With only half a day left to work out what's going on here, there's no time to lose.
Paul, Brian, can you bring cleaning stuff over here? We've definitely got some features. They're looking rather grave-shaped. This is the central spot of the enclosure.
Ooh, how interesting. Actually, might be worth going back a little bit more as well, mightn't it? Just before we do any at that level. I think it's worth taking another. Yeah.
Another swipe.
Another swipe. Yeah. If you've got to, if they are graves, not doubting you, but if they are graves, then they're going to take a lot of recording and everything else, so we can't go too much further. No. That is absolutely brilliant. I love you.
Finally, something tangible in Trench 4. But we've hit a dead end in Trench 2, where Helen thought we might have had a Bronze Age barrow, but unfortunately, on excavation, the clay in the middle no longer appears to be a burial.
So we are now starting to think that this is actually probably a natural or geological feature, because this white clay, it doesn't really have anything archaeological in it that we can tell. It looks very mottled, and it actually seems to dive right under the shillet. So Pete actually came in and smashed some of the side out, and it does seem to continue underneath. So actually it might just be a geological pocket of clay that's just come up in this spot, and it just happens to be slap bang in the middle of this ring ditch.
So it's just a natural lens?
Yeah.
And do we have enough evidence to be able to adjudicate between John on the one hand wanting almost anything other than a house, you know, maybe a burial, and James who wants it to be an Iron Age roundhouse?
Well, you've got to go with what you've got in the ground, and unfortunately all we do have is the ring ditch, and so I don't think we can make either of them happy, unfortunately. Although I'll let you break that news rather than me. I'm going to be far away over there.
And the samples that Naomi took from the clay earlier confirm our worst suspicions.
Basically, there was nothing in there. Very, very sterile. Very, very hard clay, like natural clay.
What we still haven't worked out is what it's doing there in that very shiny, bright, yellow-blue lump.
Yeah.
And you can't get us any further on.
No, I mean, flotation is a great addition to any archaeological site, but when you've got this weird blob of clay that just doesn't fit in, it's like it just fell out of the sky almost. There's no other kind of clay around it. It's a mystery.
And if it's not a Bronze Age barrow, and there's no sign of habitation, perhaps this could have been some sort of shelter or shed. And the one piece of dating evidence was from the 1st century BC to the 1st century AD. Meanwhile, Angie has finished firing the replica Bronze Age pots that Natalie and she were working on yesterday.
And you can see your pot emerging here.
I can.
That bowl.
Look
now,
at him.
it is dying down, so I'm going to try and get your bowl out.
Okay, you now are sure it's not going to break?
No, I don't think so.
I made a not broken pot.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm calling this a win.
Good.
All right.
Is that Gabriel clay? Is that you've used? And this has actually been fired, and it's.
Yeah, that's why it's all blackened on the outside. It's been an actual fire. That's not my extraordinary and surreal decoration. That's the consequence of elements, Gus.
But wow, look at this.
I think here's the decoration.
There's more Bronze Age pottery emerging from Matt's roundhouse.
Oh, yes,
There it is.
Yeah, that's definitely Trevisca ware.
What's amazing is it's so crisp.
Yeah.
You can see the indentations like it was made yesterday, can't you?
Yeah.
That's just amazing.
So how big would this vessel have been?
So I think it's going to be quite large, maybe about that sort of size.
Wow.
The pottery seems to have been laid out deliberately inside the Bronze Age roundhouse, and a leaf through the archive of Victor Ambros's drawings is helping us to imagine what it might have looked like. And Helen has now confirmed with Andrew Brown of the British Museum that the coin we found on day 1 is a sestertius, which was in use from about 100 to 260 AD.
Because it is so corroded and you can see so little of it, I put up an example of the kind of thing, another sestertius, recorded by the Portable Antiquities Scheme. And this one's in really good condition. And you can see the emperor's head. In this case, I think it's Trajan, and he's got a lot of writing around.
So Aug, yeah, so we can see he's Augustus, and this bit is Optimo, so he's a good one.
The best.
the best of them. And then down here a little bit, you can just about make out Traiano. So
fantastic.
Yeah, so we can see that, as usual, the emperors are plugging themselves as being just terrific.
So they're advertising, aren't they? They're political advertising.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, and so these coins, what's really interesting is seeing these coins in use, because it's not a high value coin. I think I'm right to say that 1.5 sesterces in around this time would buy you roughly, very vaguely, about 2 loaves of bread.
A number of late 3rd century coins found at Boden have been reported to the Portable Antiquities Scheme as treasure under the Treasure Act of 1996, and they'll be looked at in detail by experts at the British Museum. The Roman cemetery theory is looking less convincing. What we thought was a burial in the centre of the square enclosure now appears to be a deep pit with a large stone in the bottom, throwing doubt on the rest of the possible graves.
We had the edges here and here, and you can now see it coming through round like this. So we know we've got all of it now.
Which is great, and we can do a half section to get the
This
length
way.
of it. See what this should be. Could still be a grave, but it's obviously not going to be an adder. It could be a crouched grave, I guess, but it's not looking so much like it now. But the only way to find out is to
half section. Yeah.
With only a few hours left, things are getting tense. But Stewart and Carl are still convinced that this enclosure is something unique in Cornwall.
So what's sort of really interesting me is the fact that you've got this very rigorous definition of space in a landscape full of very curvilinear prehistoric stuff. Something very different about it.
And it's so out of place.
Isn't it? I mean, just
it's
what's wrong with that?
You know, rectangular features almost scream Roman.
They do, don't they? Yeah.
You know, certainly because they're so rare here in Cornwall.
Yeah.
You know, yes, we occasionally get square rounds, but this is so defined, so sharp,
isn't it?
And it's too small to be around.
Yeah.
Cornish rounds or farmsteads are generally, well, round. Just like what we're investigating in Trench 5, where a piece of pottery is enough to convince Carenza that this one was probably Iron Age.
you can see the sort of shape of the rim, and you can just see where the edge of it's just coming out like this. So it's like a little squat pot, a bit like a sort of Marmite jar, only a bit bigger. And critically, it's very diagnostic, it's very dateable. Iron Age, essentially.
Iron Age, yeah.
And I guess because these features here are all, none of them are cutting across each other, so they look like they're all part of the same complex. So although we've only got one piece of pottery to date a lot of features, there's a little bit of a stretch. We haven't that much pottery, so I think we can be reasonably reliant on that.
Yeah, hopefully.
The Iron Age landscape is beginning to make sense, with a farmstead on the top of the hill and a round building close to the enclosure around the Fogou. The line of stones in Trench 1 marks the entrance from that enclosure ditch to the side passage descending down into the rock-cut chamber of the Fogou. And now, Carenza is wondering whether the square enclosure that we thought might have been a Roman cemetery might also be late Iron Age.
So we suddenly hit a layer where there were stones, including that really big one that's on the edge there.
Oh, wow.
So we think what it is that big stone, and well, all of those stones together, particularly the big one, is a sort of pad for a big timber post. So if you're putting a big timber post in the ground, you want something to stop it sinking any further into the ground. And it's very clayey down there. And we found a little bit of beetle wing case in there.
Because beetle wing case, that's usually a sign of decomposition of of some
beetles,
organic matter.
Yeah, some beetles are characteristic of where there's been organic, flesh
Yes.
decomposing because they like to eat it.
Yes.
So, but anyway, it's environmental evidence. But the key thing is we've got this feature. It looks circular, and what's really interesting, we are bang in the middle of this enclosure here. So it could have been a freestanding post. It may have been some sort of signifier of identity. You think like a sort of Native American, those sort of carved posts you get, that sort of thing, yes. My theory, and I don't have a lot of evidence for this, but there's no evidence against it either, but I wonder if what we're looking at is something like an excarnation enclosure. So you remember me saying the other day, jokingly, they have this thing about nobody died in the Iron Age because we very rarely find Iron Age burials. And I just wonder, given that this enclosure is so clean of archaeology, actually, it's so clean of finds, whether it is actually people are excluded from it, you just put the dead in there. And the Iron Age is 800 years. That's as far as takes us back to Thomas à Becket from now. You're talking a long period of time. So maybe you've got the Fogou as one sort of spiritual area, and perhaps this is another, but they're both in the Iron Age.
Yes. Environmental evidence might yet prove that one of the pits contained a burial. But either way, Carenza's thinking chimes with Stewart's theory that the square enclosure is an expression of new cultures and influences coming up the Hereford River as a result of trading links with Rome and the wider world.
So, if the Romans come here, or in the late Iron Age people come here, and this is a point of contact, and there are some mysteries already in the landscape with the Fogou, you see where I'm going with it? This is a point of contact almost between different cultures. So to see that very specific rectangular enclosure, I think, is placing a statement on this landscape, almost in reverence of early memories from the earlier cultures. And that could be late Iron Age, it could be Roman period. And I think there's something actually very unique and special about that enclosure, which is almost a monument in itself, just that space. It doesn't have to be a building there even. It could be a tree.
So much of the Iron Age and Romano-British story here is ephemeral. But roll back another 1,000 years, and we may well be able to get real concrete evidence for what our Bronze Age roundhouse dwellers were storing in their pots.
The moment of truth.
It is. You've got your trowel.
I've got my trowel.
And, we're doing analysis on the inside of that bit of pot, which is the bit facing down. So we can't touch it with our hands. It's all, we've got your gloves on. So if I just go in round the edge there.
So this dark stuff is because
I think it's the whole building has burnt and collapsed in.
That's amazing.
So I'll just loosen that for you a bit there. There it is.
Oh,
right,
my.
okay. It's up to you now.
Are you sure about this, Matt?
Yeah, if you just get your trowel under there.
So I'm wearing these gloves so that we can actually potentially put it in this bag. Oh, it's a little crack there, is that?
That's fine, yeah. It's 3,500 years old. It's going to be a little crack.
That is nerve-wracking.
Good job. Perfect, so it's wrapped over now, so that had no human contact, there's no dirt off our hands on it or anything like that might affect the sample.
Oh, my heart's beating, actually. That is a glorious thing.
There's something really moving about lifting and holding this pottery and imagining our Bronze Age inhabitants maybe dancing over it in a ceremony at the closure of their homes 3,000 years ago. As the light fades, the team gathers to watch Dani and Matt carefully lift what amount to 30 pieces of Treviscoware.
Turn it over.
Oh wow, look
There
at
we
that.
go.
Oh,
Beautiful.
what a find for the end of the day.
Brilliant,
though.
yeah.
Oh wow, look at that. The imprint of the decoration is in the soil.
The incredible photogrammetry of this sherd even reveals the ends of strings that made the imprinted design. Other sherds from this trench fitted together to give us a fantastic idea of what these beautiful pots would have looked like. Lipid analysis will hopefully yield some information about what the Bronze Age people were using these beautiful pots for. And Naomi's post-excavation work revealed more information about the Fogou. Calcined bone and grain found in the soil suggest that perhaps rituals or ceremonies were conducted here in our Fogou. Over the last 3 days, this site has revealed archaeology spanning Bronze Age, Iron Age and Roman periods. But I can't help feeling that we've only just scratched the surface.
We got such fantastic results across the site, but this stood out like a sore thumb. I mean, it's such a strong feature, and being square and having so little going on the inside, I mean, it was a total mystery.
But you know, when you look at what's actually in the trench that we've dug, it's looking very similar to what we've got in Trench 2. We've had all these funny little features that look like proper features on the top, and when we dig them, they kind of disappear. They turn into natural things. This is a difficult place, and I think the only answer is to do an open area excavation, take the whole lot off so we can see it all in plan. I've been trying to persuade James that that is his task.
This had all the echoes of a spiritual place, in a way, a space reserved for something. And I think to identify something that has this crossover of cultures from the Iron Age, possibly into the Roman period, and all in this one small space, I think, you know, it's so invigorating, isn't it?
Well, what's great is how it's all come together really at the last minute. We've had some Iron Age pottery from this complex up here, and we've got Bronze Age right over down there, and we've now got this massive pit feature, one feature that really isn't natural, in the centre of this. We found some other examples here which are suggesting that it is late Iron Age, perhaps early Roman, to do with funerary ritual, certainly ritual, when in a period when Iron Age communities are adopting squarishness across southern England.
Yeah, and of course square things like this are unique down here in Cornwall.
But not in the rest of England.
Not in the rest of England, so it's a first for Boden, and as we've said, the best thing to do here to understand it is to excavate all of it and have a good look at it, so we'll try and do that.
This square enclosure was most likely to have been a space reserved for ceremony in the early Roman period, perhaps to honour the dead. Perhaps for traders from distant lands to give thanks to the gods for safe passage. Whatever was here was important and unique, and probably reflected an earlier significance of the mysterious labyrinthine Fogou. The geophirs and excavations have revealed just how large the Fogou was. But there's so much more to be discovered. Iron Age people could have entered the Fogou from various entrances, including a large enclosure ditch. From here, they would have descended deep into the caverns, towards a chamber lit with tallow candles. Walked along dark stone-lined passageways, and perhaps they would have taken part in rituals or ceremonies to protect valuable goods stored safely underground.
Now I'm just over 6 foot tall, and I find this space within the centre of this Fogou a little bit constraining. I mean, these are the stones which probably supported the lintel, so you can imagine you probably would have had to have been, I don't know, well, definitely under 5 foot to fit comfortably in here. But I get a sense that you were meant to feel intimate in this space, that this is not just meant to be a series of passages. It's not meant to be a space of utility. This is a space of reflection. And so, of course, you'd want to be close to the earth. That's what this was about, encasing yourself within this very landscape. Can you think of a better way of feeling connection to this very special bit of Cornwall?
Hello, my name's John Gator. Time Team is fan-funded by Patreon. This vital support helps us to make new episodes. Joining Patreon gives you access to exclusive interviews, 3D models and masterclasses, plus lots more.